We're just going to look more broadly for each of those groups. So for audience one, senior executives and ministers, I think we've kind of said this actually in answering that row, but what do they need most? A thought here with the use of the image before is I think maybe that CAD more broadly is kind of almost responsible for passing a baton of insights to them so that they can use it for their audiences and their needs. Nick made the point that those needs might be quite political and focused, but nonetheless they do have their needs, and they're needing to be given information that they can trust that fits into, they can trust that has taken their concerns into account, or consider their needs and priorities into account, and that they can trust and they can use. So to do this, there needs to be this clear, succinct, or they need a clear, succinct response to the question, to the brief, with the implications, assumptions, and risks clearly identified. Confidence that this is rooted in the concerns and issues that they face, and that important things have not been overlooked. And the opportunity to question for context and to check and refine their thinking, and in turn communicate effectively to their audiences. I found this great quote actually, which I think sums it up nicely. I am trusting this part that says it's in a, this is from a memo from Winston Churchill entitled Brevity. I'm trusting that. The source is here if you want to have a look. But I think this kind of makes the case. So apparently Winston Churchill took a personal stake in the way the British War Cabinet communicated, and he wrote a memo entitled Brevity, which made the case for more efficient writing. To do our work, we all have to read a mass of papers, which we've identified is clearly something that the senior execs and ministers need to do. Nearly all of them are far too long. This wastes time, whilst energy has to be spent in looking for the essential points. And the results may at first seem rough as compared with the flat surface of officialese jargon. But the saving of time will be great, while the discipline of setting out the real points concisely will prove an aid to clear thinking. So I think that's just quite a nice reference that kind of encapsulates what we're trying to say there and the essence of this audience. So for the public, again, you've actually mentioned some of this. Apologies, that's not a road scheme in the image, but I think it gives the sense, I'm imagining this is kind of like a public consultation or some other engagement form. It doesn't have to be that, but some other engagement form with the audience. So for the public, does anyone want to venture a guess? And we've kind of touched on it actually in what we've done. Does anyone want to venture a guess what the public really need from all of this, when they, from the communication of analysis? What are they really looking for? What do they really need?
I think they need how much this project would benefit them, how will it impact, and what are the mitigations, if there is any we are providing.
That's a pretty strong list there. That's fantastic. Anyone else want to add to that?
That the tax money is used like in a proper way and it is benefiting them.
Another good point. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and
that's
there's some
simple.
transparency. Yes.
Yeah, that's really good. Fantastic. You've kind of, in fact, you've added a few more thoughts. For them, they need to be drawn into this. They need the problem or the challenge or the project or whatever. They need to be introduced to what it is, what's being investigated and why. So that kind of context. And they kind of need that education part with this, because they're not familiar with it all the time. They have some interest in it for whatever reason. They're either they're just locally interested, or it affects potentially where they live or how they travel. But they need to be brought into it. So it's much more of that story and helping to convey those kind of key issues. And then also, as you've said, the kind of, this wording is perhaps not quite as you've said it, but I think the essence is there, which is the confidence that a variety of considerations, which could also be money spent as well, as you said, Sumbul, and views and perspectives are being taken into account. So whilst we might have quite particular views ourselves, I think people are quite open to the fact that if there's good evidence to support or to show that there's a mix of views and that things have been taken and considered in the round, that is helpful. And then thirdly, just a quick summary.
Louise has added a useful point: straightforward and simple to understand, something that doesn't assume technical terms. And of course, in terms of the stuff we've introduced people to, or they knew already, I don't know which, on System 2 and System 1 thinking. I mean, we all have both. System 1 is the kind of the intuitive thing, and it's the thing we carry around. I defy any analyst, however brilliant, to constantly be analysing things in a statistically sound way in their heads. But probably some amongst you are like that. But I think on the whole, we carry around the takeouts from our analysis, and that's kind of very System 1. And if we can explain things in easy terms, we can explain them to ourselves in easier terms, and that makes it clearer for everyone. And that's the Churchill point, and it's Louise's point as well. And the public don't need jargon. They don't need a lot of technical mumbo jumbo. They just need a straightforward exposition of the facts as quickly and as succinctly as possible.
That's brilliant. Thanks so much, Louise, and also Nick for that as well. That's fabulous. And then for the for audience 3, for other analysts or other technical audiences, anyone want to venture any thoughts on what they might need as a priority from the communication of analysis?
I guess you could be a bit more technical in your responses, maybe less tidy. I don't know.
Yeah.
So long as you get them the results that they need, that should be sufficient. Yeah,
no, that's a really good point, Steve. Yeah, so I think I added one in here saying that actually clarity on what is being addressed is because they're probably looking for that. What's the problem? What are we trying to solve? But yeah, also more of a you can provide more of the process for this. They may well want to check that. They might want to understand that as well as the overall results as well, which I think touches on what you'd said. And then I'm suggesting here that they would want some comfort that the core messages and findings are easily accessible for those without deep knowledge, and certainly are crafted in construction of a wider strategic context, which can actually be quite challenging when you've been so deep in the weeds in a particular area. So hopefully we've spent quite a lot of time on that, but hopefully that's really got you into that. And the idea is to build out from that, either help you do those kind of worksheets for the work that you do, or perhaps help, which might be helpful, to start creating kind of personas for these types of audiences, build out some of the discussions and work that we've had today. A persona is really like a kind of, I suppose, a CV for a kind of mythical representation of one or more of those audiences or people within those audiences, that gives a kind of ready reckoner and a sense of to get into their mindset very quickly without having to try and come up with your own version of that. So that's a suggestion that we should perhaps look at, and Steve, maybe we can follow that up with you and Connor and see how that works, and others' feedback on that.